Silver just had its worst day in weeks, and the metal everyone was calling the next gold fell for a reason that has nothing to do with gold at all. On August 18th, silver dropped more than 3% in a single session, sliding from above $66 an ounce down toward $64. That might sound like a normal pullback after a huge run. It isn't, because the thing that hit silver wasn't a mining strike, wasn't a drop in demand, and wasn't even a Federal Reserve rate decision. It was the bond market. And if you don't fully understand what that means yet, stay with this. Because by the end, you're going to see silver's price the same way traders on Wall Street see it. Not as a shiny metal, but as a bet against the US government's ability to manage its own debt. If you're the kind of person who follows money, investing, gold, silver, and the economy, and you're trying to protect what you've built, this is exactly the kind of story worth sticking around for. Because Money Insiders exists to break down these connections in plain English. So go ahead and subscribe and like this video while we get into it, because the next few minutes explain something most silver investors are watching happen right now without understanding why. Here's the part that surprises people. Silver isn't down because anyone stopped wanting it. In fact, on the very same day silver dropped, the US 30-year Treasury bond yield surged to 5.33%. The highest level in 19 years, closing in on levels last seen back in 2002. The 10-year Treasury yield, the one tied most directly to your mortgage rate, your car loan, and your credit card interest, pushed toward 4.75%, its highest point in 20 months. Now, if you're not a bond trader, that might sound like background noise. It isn't. It's the loudest signal in the entire financial system right now, and it just ran straight through the silver market. So what does a bond yield actually mean for someone who has never bought a bond in their life? Think of it like this. When you buy a Treasury bond, you're lending money to the US government, and the yield is the interest rate they pay you back. When that yield goes up, it means investors are demanding more compensation to keep lending the government money. And when investors can suddenly earn over 5% a year just by holding something as safe as a US government bond, silver, which pays no interest, no dividend, nothing, starts to look a lot less appealing by comparison. That's the mechanism. Higher yields raise what's called the opportunity cost of holding metal. Every ounce of silver sitting in a vault is now competing against a bond that pays real, guaranteed cash. That single relationship is why a bond market story turned into a silver sell-off within hours. But here's where the story gets more interesting, because the obvious explanation doesn't fully hold up. If higher yields were simply about a stronger economy or the Fed getting ready to hike rates, that would be one thing. Except the economic data coming out over the past 2 weeks has actually pointed the other way. Retail sales fell an unexpected 0.6% last month. Producer prices came in flat. Those are exactly the kinds of numbers that normally push yields down, not up. According to strategists at Barclays, 3 separate economic releases this month argued for lower yields, and long-term yields rose anyway. That's a contradiction worth sitting with for a second. The bond market is behaving like it knows something the incoming data isn't telling us. So what is it actually reacting to? The answer takes us away from silver for a moment and toward Washington. The US national debt is now approaching $40 trillion. The Congressional Budget Office projects this year's federal budget deficit at roughly $2.1 trillion. And here's the number that should genuinely stop you. Interest paid on that debt reached $857 billion in just the first 9 months of this fiscal year, a figure that now exceeds what the federal government spent on Medicare and the military combined over that same period. Let that sink in for a moment. The government is now spending more just to service old debt than it spends on the 2 largest categories of federal spending most Americans actually think about. And here's the part that makes this dangerous rather than just uncomfortable. It's a feedback loop. As yields rise, the government's interest bill grows. As the interest bill grows, the government has to issue even more debt to cover it. And as more debt gets issued, investors demand even higher yields to absorb it. Higher yields create more debt. More debt creates higher yields. That loop is exactly what markets have been pricing into Treasury bonds since June. And it's exactly what pulled the rug out from under silver on August 18th. Now, you might be asking why this is happening now, specifically. And that's where a name you may not know yet becomes important. Kevin Warsh, the newly installed Federal Reserve Chairman. At the Fed's July meeting, policymakers left interest rates unchanged in the 3.5% to 3.75% range, but three officials dissented, arguing the Fed should have raised rates instead of holding steady. Three dissents at a single meeting is unusual. It signals real division inside the institution that's supposed to be the anchor of financial stability. On top of that, Warsh has been vocal about moving away from what's called forward guidance, the Fed's old habit of telegraphing its next moves to markets in advance. Bond strategists at Bank of America have pointed to that shift as a major driver of the recent yield spike, arguing that markets are now demanding a higher uncertainty premium simply because they don't know what the Fed is going to do next. Less guidance from the Fed means more guessing from investors, and more guessing means higher risk premiums baked directly into bond yields, the same yields that are currently working against silver. Here's a detail that changes the picture even further. This isn't just an American story. Japan's 10-year bond yield just hit its highest level in 3 decades. German 30-year bond yields were going to reach their highest point since 2011. French 30-year yields touched levels not seen since 2008. This is a global repricing of long-term government debt, driven partly by worldwide inflation concerns and partly by a massive wave of corporate bond issuance, much of it tied to the artificial intelligence build-out, with analysts at Barclays projecting investment-grade corporate debt issuance could hit $1.9 trillion this year alone, competing directly with government bonds for investor capital. When AI companies are issuing record volumes of corporate debt at the same time, governments are ramping up Treasury issuance to cover record deficits. Investors have more high-quality options competing for their money than ever before. And safe haven metals like silver, which generate zero income, get squeezed from every direction at once. This isn't the first time rising yields have ambushed precious metals investors who thought they understood the relationship. Go back to 2013, a period traders still refer to as the taper tantrum. The Federal Reserve simply hinted it might slow down its bond buying program, and long-term Treasury yields jumped more than a full percentage point in a matter of months. Gold, which had been trading above $1,600 an ounce, fell by roughly a third that year. Silver fell even harder, dropping over 30% as investors rotated out of non-yielding metal and into bonds that suddenly paid real interest again. The parallel isn't perfect. Today's yield spike is being driven by deficit fears and fiscal uncertainty rather than a Fed signaling it would pull back stimulus, but the underlying mechanism is identical. When the return on safe paper assets rises fast enough, metal that pays nothing gets repriced downward, regardless of how strong the long-term industrial story looks on paper. History doesn't repeat exactly, but this is the second time in just over a decade that the bond market has reminded silver investors who's actually setting the terms. There's another number worth sitting with here because it reframes how extreme silver's move over the past 2 years really has been. Analysts sometimes track something called the silver to Dow ratio, essentially how many ounces of silver it would take to buy one share of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Back in 1980, during silver's last truly historic spike, that ratio sat around 18. Today, even after silver's massive run, that ratio is still sitting above 600. Silver bulls point to that gap as evidence the metal remains historically undervalued relative to financial assets, even near all-time nominal highs. Skeptics point to the same number and argue it shows silver has been in a decades-long secular decline relative to paper wealth, and that a spike towards 650 doesn't mean much if it was 700 a year ago and might be 500 a year from now. Both interpretations are using the same data. That's worth remembering the next time someone tells you a single ratio proves where silver is headed next. So, what does all of this actually mean for someone watching this video who isn't a bond trader and doesn't own a single Treasury note? It means your mortgage rate is connected to this story because the 10-year Treasury yield is the benchmark lenders use to price home loans. It means your credit card interest and your auto loan payments are connected to this story too. Consider a simple hypothetical example. Someone refinancing a 30-year mortgage when the 10-year Treasury yield was near 3.9% versus refinancing that same mortgage today with the 10-year yield near 4.75%. Could easily see their rate quote come in a full percentage point or more higher on a $400,000 loan. That difference alone can mean well over $200 a month in extra payments for as long as they hold that mortgage. That's not a hypothetical confined to Wall Street trading desks. That's a number that shows up in a real family's budget. And it means if you're retired or approaching retirement and you're holding bonds for income, you're now getting paid more than you would have a year ago. Genuinely good news for savers, even as it creates headwinds for gold and silver. And if you're someone who bought silver as a hedge against inflation or economic uncertainty, it means you need to understand that silver's price isn't only about supply and demand for the metal itself. It's also a referendum on how confident the market is in the government's fiscal path. When that confidence wavers, yields rise, and silver takes the hit, even if nothing about the metal itself has changed. Now, here's where the story needs a reality check, because a single bad day doesn't tell the whole story of where silver actually stands. Zoom out, and the picture looks very different. Silver hit an all-time nominal high of $121.67 an ounce back on January 29th of this year. Even after this pullback to around $64, silver is still up nearly 70% compared to a year ago. This is a metal that traded for about $5 an ounce when analysts who've covered this market since the 1980s first started their careers. The scale of what's happened over the past 18 months is genuinely historic, and one rough week driven by Treasury market stress doesn't erase that. But that raises another question that deserves a closer look. Is the long-term case for silver still intact, or is the ground actually shifting underneath it? This is where the story splits into two very different threads, and both are backed by real data. On one side, JP Morgan Global Research has been quietly cutting its silver forecasts. Back in May, the bank projected an average price of $84 an ounce for silver this year. That estimate has since been revised down to $70, with the bank now projecting silver could average around $63 an ounce in the fourth quarter of this year and stay near that level through 2027. JP Morgan also noted that India and China, two of the largest silver importing nations on Earth, may be pulling back on purchases, and that solar panel manufacturers have been thrifting, meaning engineering their panels to use less silver per unit as prices climbed. That's a genuine headwind, and it's the kind of detail that gets buried under headlines about record highs. On the other side of the ledger sits a demand story that most casual investors have never fully grasped. Roughly 60% of global silver demand now comes from industrial use, not investment or jewelry. And according to the Silver Institute, that industrial demand is on pace to exceed 720 million ounces this year, the highest figure on record. Solar panel manufacturing alone could consume well over 100 million ounces. Electric vehicles, which use significantly more silver than traditional combustion engine cars, add tens of millions more. And then there's the newest driver, artificial intelligence data centers, which rely on silver's unmatched electrical conductivity for the connectors, circuit boards, and thermal components that keep AI servers running. The Silver Institute estimates data center-related silver demand has roughly tripled over the past 5 years and continues climbing. Meanwhile, roughly 70% of the world's silver is mined only as a byproduct of copper, lead, zinc, and gold mining, meaning even a much higher silver price can't quickly summon more supply because nobody digs a new mine just to chase silver alone. That combination, rising structural demand, flat supply, and what's now a 6th consecutive year of global deficit according to industry data, is the case silver bulls are making, and it has nothing to do with bond yields at all. So which story wins? The honest answer, and the one a responsible video has to give you, is that nobody knows for certain, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. What we can say is that these two forces, the bond market's yield story and silver's industrial supply and demand story, are pulling in different directions right now, and that tension is likely to define silver's price for months to come, not just this week. If Treasury yields keep climbing because the deficit keeps widening and the Fed under Warsh keeps signaling uncertainty rather than clarity, that's a headwind for silver that could persist, regardless of how tight the physical market gets. If, on the other hand, incoming economic data weakens further, forcing the Fed toward rate cuts and pulling yields back down, silver could catch a strong bid again, especially with a structural supply deficit sitting underneath it like dry kindling. And if industrial demand from AI infrastructure and solar keeps accelerating the way the Silver Institute currently projects, that could offset softening demand from Asian importers, even if bond yields stay elevated. It's also worth being honest about the scenario nobody likes to talk about. If global bond markets keep repricing higher together, the way they currently are in Japan, Germany, and France as much as in the United States, that could reflect something bigger than any single country's budget fight. It could reflect a broader, multi-year adjustment in how much investors around the world are willing to pay to hold long-term government debt at all, after more than a decade of historically low rates. If that's what's actually happening, precious metals could face a longer and choppier headwind than a simple month-to-month news cycle would suggest, even with a tight physical silver market underneath it. None of these scenarios is a prediction. They're simply the range of outcomes the current evidence supports, and a responsible way to think about a market that is, at this exact moment, being pulled in two directions by two very different forces. There's one more piece of this puzzle still unfolding as this video comes together. The U.S. Treasury Department recently announced it would double the size of its government debt buyback program, an effort aimed at managing market function and potentially easing some of the upward pressure on yields. The Federal Reserve's July meeting minutes were released this week, giving investors their first detailed look at exactly how divided the committee really is. And Fed Chair Warsh is set to speak at the Jackson Hole Symposium, the annual gathering where central bankers often signal their next moves. Any of these events could shift the yield picture, and by extension, shift the pressure currently sitting on silver within days. So let's bring this back to the question this video opened with. The bond market didn't crush silver because silver did anything wrong. It crushed silver because the U.S. government's borrowing costs are rising fast enough to make holding a zero-yield metal look less attractive by comparison. And that rise is being driven by a genuinely uncertain fiscal and monetary picture. Record deficits, a nearly $40 trillion debt load, a new Fed chairman still establishing credibility with markets, and a global bond sell-off that stretches from Washington to Tokyo to Frankfurt. None of that erases silver's underlying industrial story, which remains one of the most compelling supply and demand setups of any commodity in the world right now. What it does mean is that silver, at least for now, is being pulled by two forces at once: a monetary story that's working against it, and an industrial story that's working for it. And the price you see on any given day depends on which force is winning that particular battle. The mental model worth carrying forward isn't buy silver or avoid silver. It's this: watch what Treasury yields are doing and why, because that single number is telling you more about the next move in precious metals than almost anything else on the financial calendar. Understand that relationship, and the next time silver moves sharply in either direction, you won't be confused by it. You'll already know what to look for. If you learned something new today, make sure to subscribe to Money Insiders and like this video. More powerful financial insights are coming next. This video is AI generated.